Hey everyone, so Joseph Marmerstein put together some videos recently of elite throwers throwing backhands and flicks in like super slow motion, so you can really break down their technique. And he's got loads of different angles. It's really sweet compilation. It's on a YouTube playlist. It was on Ultiworld as well. And I'll link it down below. It started a discussion on Reddit. Frank Huguenard chimed in on this discussion to call out the techniques as being absolute garbage. It particularly focused on Jimmy Mickle, saying that his flick technique, his sidearm technique, was total garbage and inefficient and unbalanced and ineffective, and he could train him to be much better, and you couldn't believe that the throws were actually working. Usual kind of Frank stuff. People asked Frank whether he had a video of his throwing technique, which is supposedly so much better, and then Frank linked to a video that he posted many years ago. Of him throwing loads of flicks and backhands with both hands. So I thought it'd be really interesting to get Joseph Marmerstein's video of Jimmy Mickle and put it side by side with Frank's video, so we can have like a Mickle versus Frank technique off and have a look and analyze them like together. So that sounds pretty exciting to me. So here we go. One of the first things to notice is that Mickle steps out into his throw, puts his right foot forward, whereas Frank just keeps his 2 feet planted on the floor and uses rotation in his body a lot more. So Frank's weight is distributed more to the center, and then when he releases, it goes slightly onto his pivot foot, whereas Mickle will start on his pivot foot and then step out and put all of his weight then into this non-pivot foot, the one he's stepping out with. When Mickle goes for the longer throw, he'll emphasize that step more, so he brings his weight all the way back onto his pivot foot and then steps all the way out onto his non-pivot foot and puts all the energy down into the ground on that release. Frank keeps his feet in the same place and will rotate back and then swing forward. You see his shoulders align with the angle that he's going to release the disc as well. And I think both of them kind of get their shoulders and possibly their core as well kind of tilted to align with the inside out that you need for longer throws. The stance before the throw is interesting. Mickle is kind of coiling, like getting ready to kind of step into the throw. He's got the disc in sidearm grip already, whereas Frank is in a neutral position with the disc with both hands out in front of him. He's not telling the defender he's going to throw anything in particular, so he could throw any throw with any hand from this position, whereas Mickle has weighted his body to go into the flick. When Mickle winds up, he turns the disc up vertically, whereas Frank keeps it a lot flatter. I think something Wiggins has said before is that you should have the disc at the angle you're going to release it when you're at your most furthest back point in your wind-up. Another thing to notice is how much their bodies rotate. So you can see when they're wound up, both of their shoulders are rotated, so their left shoulder is pointing towards the camera, and then as they go through, their shoulders rotate out. But with Frank, maybe connected to his footwork, his then shoulders rotate all the way across and his arm comes all the way across after the release. After they release the disc, you see Frank swings his body around. It fits with the whole kind of swinging motion that he's putting into the disc. The core rotates more, whereas Mickle kind of stops short. Frank throws with both hands, but I flipped the video so that it looks like he's throwing right-handed. His left-handed technique is where the tree appears on his left-hand side in the background. It's interesting to see how the two techniques compare. They're obviously very different. You can't say whose is more effective necessarily. Mickle's obviously won loads of titles and is known to be a very effective thrower, but there are clearly a lot of arguments possible in favour of Frank's technique in terms of starting and finishing in a balanced position, utilising more rotational core energy. The balance that Frank has and the speed of his release and the balanced position enabling him to possibly go into other throws. You can see after he releases the flick, if he'd faked it, he could just be releasing a backhand across his body if the disc was still in his hands. Whereas with Mickle, after he releases his flick, there's no way that he's going to be able to make another throw from that position. So if it was a fake, then it would take a lot longer then to get back into a position where he'd be able to make any throw. Thanks to Joseph Marmerstein for getting the source footage. It's a very interesting project to compare all those techniques of elite throwers, and then it was particularly interesting then to get Frank's insight, because he kind of branched off very early from traditional kind of ultimate learning, so if anything it gives just a fresh perspective. There's no arguing that Frank's a very skilled thrower. He's throwing these with both hands. Personally, I found that when I learnt to throw lefty, my technique was better on my left, because it kind of had to be in order to like I didn't have the same kind of like dexterity, so the technique had to be more sound to make the throw as good. And then learning the technique with my left taught me a lot more about the technique with your right, and it actually then improved my right-handed technique as well. And the technique that I learnt from my left is more similar to Frank's in that the disc is kind of loose. It has the same feel as Frank's demonstrating in the video, where he kind of sways from side to side. Start from the neutral position with the disc in both hands in front of you, and then come out to the side and kind of sling it forward. There's a lot of kind of slinging that's happening with Frank's technique, whereas Jimmy's is much like firmer grip and like a solid, like all energy goes boom into this release point here. Frank can like swing from one side to the other, and then just let go of the frisbee at some point. Very, very different techniques. Very interesting to see, at least interesting for me. I hope you found it interesting as well, seeing the two techniques compared. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you did enjoy it, then please subscribe to the channel and share this video with other people. I'm interested to hear your opinion as well. If you want to add comments, stay tuned for more. Another thing to notice is how much their bodies rotate. So you can see when they're wound up, both of their shoulders are rotated, pointing